Okay, so have you ever felt like when it comes to like female pleasure, there's this whole secret language, like nobody actually like teaches you?
Mm.
Well, good news, because today we're going to decode all of that.
Right.
We're going deep into the nuances of what really makes oral sex pleasurable
Yeah.
for women.
It's a big topic.
It is a big topic. And I think by the end of this deep dive,
Yeah.
you're going to understand not just like the mechanics, but, the emotional and psychological, like the whole landscape of this whole experience.
Absolutely.
And like what makes it fulfilling for both partners.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really important, I think, to approach this whole conversation with, a real sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
And respect, too,
Right.
because pleasure, it's complex, right?
Yeah.
It's a deeply personal experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before we even get started with anything, the most important thing is, enthusiastic consent.
Right.
That's non-negotiable.
Absolutely. That's it. It's like 100%. And
Yeah.
you're so right to bring that up right at the beginning because consent, it isn't just this like, oh, check the box and we're good to go.
Yeah.
It's really about making sure that all parties involved feel safe, respected, and genuinely enthusiastic about what's happening.
Yeah, and it's like you said, laying the foundation.
Right.
For real pleasure.
Yeah.
To even start.
Exact.
Okay, so we've got that foundation.
Foundation is there.
Yeah, foundation is there. So now let's talk about, we were talking about this before we even started recording, but like, arousal patterns.
Right.
Our source uses this metaphor, and I love it,
Okay. Yeah.
of men being like microwaves, heating up instantly.
Yeah.
And women being like slow-burning stoves.
Okay.
And that just makes me think of like anticipation,
Yeah.
like simmering,
Simmering.
that pot
Yeah.
about to boil over. So like what is the science behind this difference?
Well, what's really fascinating is that for many women, arousal is actually this kind of, gradual process.
Yeah.
It involves so much more than just physical touch.
Right.
It also involves things like an emotional connection,
Oh, wow.
a sense of safety and trust with their partner.
Interesting.
It's really about feeling desired
Wow.
and understood, not just physically stimulated.
So if you rush things,
Yeah.
you're actually working against
You can actually end up, working again.
creating real pleasure.
Creating real pleasure. Yeah, exactly. It's not just about like reaching the destination, right? It's about the journey.
Which journey?
And, I think about foreplay as a way to build anticipation
Yeah.
and, really connect with your partner on all these levels.
That makes so much sense. So it's kind of like, instead of focusing solely on the genitals, what are some ways to create that slow burn?
Right.
That sense of anticipation.
Okay, well, I think, things like gentle touches and kisses.
Yeah.
All over the body,
Huh?
whispering something sensual in their ear.
Okay.
Even just like holding hands, making eye contact.
Wow.
These can be so powerful.
Yeah.
And, you could even try light breath play
Yeah.
on their skin.
Interesting.
Just one thing I want to mention, though,
Oh.
a note of caution. You really want to avoid blowing directly on the genitals,
Got it.
especially during pregnancy,
Got it.
because that can actually introduce air into the vagina and cause complications.
Noted. Okay, so we've set the mood. We've, built anticipation.
Yeah.
Now I want to get into, female anatomy.
Okay.
Because our source talks about, the clitoris,
Right.
the labia, the G-spot.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people, including myself, would be surprised by how much we don't know about these areas.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to learn. So why don't we start with the clitoris? It's packed with thousands of nerve endings,
Wow.
more than any other part of the human body.
Really?
And it is the primary source of pleasure for most women.
Wow, okay.
And, we can't forget about the labia.
Yeah.
Both the outer labia majora and the inner labia minora, they're incredibly sensitive
Uh-huh.
and responsive to touch.
Now, I've heard some people say that the G-spot is a myth.
Oh, yeah.
So what's your take?
Well, the G-spot is definitely a topic of debate,
Okay.
but it is located on the front wall of the vagina.
Uh-huh.
And for some women, stimulating it can lead to intense pleasure
Yeah.
and even a different type of orgasm.
Interesting.
But, not everyone experiences G-spot sensitivity
Right.
to the same degree.
So how would someone explore that area?
Mm.
With their partner's consent, of course.
Right. Well, with consent, it's often described as kind of like a come hither motion
Uh-huh.
with the fingers.
Yeah.
But communication is just so key here.
Okay, so we've set the mood. We've explored the anatomy.
Yeah.
Now let's get into specific techniques.
Okay.
Like, do you have any tips for maximizing pleasure during oral sex?
I think the most important thing is variety.
Okay.
Attentiveness.
Yeah.
And really tuning in to your partner's responses.
Yeah.
So, you could alternate between oral and manual stimulation.
Right.
So you could be using your fingers to stimulate the clitoris or the G-spot.
Okay.
While, using your tongue on other areas.
Okay, yeah.
Speaking of the tongue, experiment with different movements.
Yeah.
Different pressures,
Yeah.
Light licking, swirling motions, gentle sucking.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Are there things to avoid? Or like potential downsides?
Yeah, for
to certain techniques?
It's really important to be mindful of your partner's feedback.
Yeah.
Sometimes too much pressure can be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or, blowing directly on the clitoris. That can be uncomfortable for some people.
Yeah.
And remember, communication is key throughout the whole thing.
Okay, that's a good point. Communication is so important. Now, our source mentions that on average, women take longer to reach orgasm than men.
Right.
So do you think this creates pressure?
I think that societal expectations definitely play a role here. They create this feeling that there's like this right amount of time for things to happen. But really, pleasure has no timer.
Right.
So I think patience, reassurance, and open communication can really help alleviate any anxiety around that timing.
So what are some practical ways to foster that patience?
Okay.
And create a truly enjoyable experience for both partners?
I think verbal affirmations are a great start. Just letting your partner know what you're enjoying.
Yeah.
Encourage them to do the same.
Yeah.
Respond to their cues. If they moan or move their body in a certain way.
Yeah.
Pay attention to those. Yeah.
And adjust accordingly.
So what does all of this mean for our listeners? How can we take this knowledge and actually create these fulfilling, pleasurable experiences?
I think it really boils down to shifting our focus. Not just thinking about the physical act, but thinking about the whole experience.
Yeah.
So understanding, the uniqueness of female pleasure.
Yeah.
Fostering that open communication.
Right.
Being present.
Being present.
Attentive.
Attentive.
To your partner's needs.
Yeah.
And embracing the journey.
The journey, not the
destination.
Destination.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful insights. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, remember to subscribe to HealthyCast, like this episode, and share your thoughts in the comments.
We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.